Hello again, everyone. This is Don with Overedge Props, and I'm here to bring you another 3D render. This one was actually requested by my good friend Deanna. I was running out of ideas and wanted to do something a little different, so I asked her for a suggestion, and she suggested the Halloween Town Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts. Now, please do not hurt me when I say this, but I have never once played a Kingdom Hearts game. Ever. In my entire life. I've had many people suggest that I play it, but other games have always caught my attention and taken priority. And after hearing some of the stuff that came out about Kingdom Hearts 3, and after watching some really funny videos that my buddy Adnan showed me that basically summed up the entire story, I was scratching my head not knowing what in the world I was actually watching. It made Metal Gear Solid sound simple. But, I do love Nightmare Before Christmas. It's one of my favorite movies. So that was kind of the incentive for me to actually render this. uh, some things about it, though. I actually did not one, but two practice renders prior to doing the final one that you're seeing now. Uh, the reason for that was the reference pictures that I was using. They were all from the same perspective, and they were all flat images. So I had to figure out how I wanted certain parts to look based off of what my mind was seeing from the reference picture itself. And, I had to take some artistic freedom, mainly with the top of the Keyblade and the guard that looks like Jack's bow tie that goes around the handle. And doing that actually helped me figure out where I should start the entire render, which ended up being the guard itself. Helped me kind of scale everything and, you know, gave me a good base to work off of for the rest of the render. But yeah, this one actually took me about 2.5 hours to do from start to finish. And I finally took breaks while I was rendering everything. Uh, Trust me, my back and everything else thanked me for it, but even with those breaks at the very end of it, I still had to kind of crawl out of my chair. So maybe more breaks are going to be needed in the future or something. But the sketching portion of it was just lots of mirroring. So, like I've done in the past, I sketch out half of it, pull it, figure out all the different details that I need to do for the actual model portion of it. Once I figure out what I need, mirror the sketch to the other side, and then pull everything and do all the detail work for it. I did do the sketch in pieces, but instead of doing a bunch of separate sketches like I've done before, I mainly just like picked one section, worked on it. Once I got the model finalized, then I went back and I did an edit of the original sketch and just built off of it from there. And that seemed to work really well. I'm still trying to figure out what's the most efficient way and the most comfortable way for me to work in the 3D model space. Both uh, both methods seem to work, and it seems like I keep going back to the build off of the original sketch method more than I am making separate sketches, because then I can actually line up stuff as well. But yeah, I started from the guard, like I was saying before, and then I moved down to the handle, and then I went up to the quote unquote blade portion of it, and then what I like to call the axe head, and then I moved down to the chain, and then finally the pumpkin charm. So when I was actually looking at the blade as a whole, the kind of theme that I got from it was like a wrought iron like fence post. And that's why I needed to figure out how the Keyblade portion of it was going to initially look. I was actually contacting a few of my friends that were big Kingdom Hearts fans and asking for their suggestions. And a lot of them were saying that most Keyblades are cylindrical. And for me, when I was looking at the reference, it didn't look completely cylindrical. It looked like it had a little more personality to it. What actually enabled me to get the shape that I wanted for the actual blade portion of it was actually figuring out what I call the crown of the Keyblade portion itself. Because once I actually got that finalized, I just pulled the profile from the bottom of it, and it looked really good. Because, like I said, when I was looking at the reference pictures, there were a couple of parts on it that made it look like there were more spikes, which would in turn change the shape of the entire blade. And once I pulled it and I saw it, I was like, that's it. That's exactly what my mind was seeing, and that's what I like, and that's what's going to stay. Because at the end of the day, this is my rendition of the Keyblade. But, even with the practices that uh, I did change a couple of parts, and that in turn created some small problems that were unforeseen, but, they were pretty quick fixes. And that's just bound to happen when you change stuff. But yeah, I used a mixture of different lines for the sketching. I used the chamfer, the fillet, and the draft functions to achieve all the edges and curves and fancy things that I like. I think I actually used the draft tool more than I did the chamfer tool this time around. But yeah, certain designs call for different tools, and this one called for the draft tool a lot more. But the part that actually was the most interesting for me to make, and probably wouldn't have guessed this, but it's the pumpkin charm that's at the bottom of the Keyblade. So what I initially did is I used the revolve function on the sketch itself, and when I did it, it was just way too smooth. I didn't like how flat it looked. So I was like, this thing's supposed to be a pumpkin. Pumpkins have ridges, they have a little bit more character to it. So what I ended up doing was using the form function, which is essentially Fusion's sculpting function. I've only used this actually a couple of times in the past. I've used it mainly just to do like small detail pieces. The project that I used it the most on was actually Nahoko Vita's dagger that I made, and the tentacle guards that are on it are actually things that I sculpted from a pipe and then just indented it and then made the suction cups and placed those each individually, which, looking back on it now, I know how to do that much easier. It took a lot of trial and error to get the desired look that I was going for. Since I haven't really used it to sculpt something or make an object like this, I had to just kind of use what I had learned many months ago and just play around with all the different functions, because a lot of the tools that are in the sculpting thing are not in the model space and vice versa. And even the ones that are shared between the two spaces do things completely differently. But at the end of the day, I was actually really happy with how the charm turned out. I do want to actually learn how to use it more, because it's going to become essential for me to actually do future renders that I have in mind. Because a lot of them have some like complex parts to them, and it's just you could do it in the 3D space, but it would take a lot longer than it would just to sculpt the thing and basically transfer it over to the model space. For the painting portion of it, I didn't go too crazy with the paints. This isn't the most flashy thing that I've made. I mainly just used the metallic flake paints, threw in some gloss here and there. I did try to use that mirror texture or paint or whatever that I love, but even with staining it a different color, it was taking away too much from the rest of the blade. So I just opted to keep with the metallic flake color for most of it, and that in turn actually made it look a little bit more like wrought iron, so I was pretty pleased with it. But yeah, this was a really interesting render to do. I mean, since I'm not a big Kingdom Hearts fan and, didn't grow up with it, it was kind of cool that one of my friends knowing that information was just like, hey, you should do this. I want to see your rendition of it. So that was really cool. And like I said, I mainly only worked off of 2 reference pictures. The main one I worked off of is the one that's in the model space itself, just changing the opacity when I needed to. But yeah, I probably won't do another Keyblade in the future unless it's highly requested, because Jesus, when I was looking at some of the Keyblades that they've come up with, they are detailed and complicated, and it made my head spin just looking at a couple of them. And you know, if I can't do it in the 3D model space, then I just don't do it too. So also keep that in mind when you give me suggestions. Yeah. But the next renders that I've got on the list right now mainly came from the Twitter poll that I recently had. So the next ones are going to be Excalibur and Kancho and Bakuya from Fate, and then the Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII. And I've been kind of playing around with the idea of revisiting some old renders that I've done and kind of touching them up and making a video for them. I'm so sorry, I do not remember who actually made the suggestion on the Twitter poll, but this all came about because someone suggested me doing Gura's Trident from Hololive. And I've already done it, but I never did a video or anything like that. So I'm still playing around with the idea if I want to go back and, you know, do a video for all of those. You know, I've learned a lot since then, so it might actually turn out a little bit better. Who knows? Still playing around with the idea, like I said. But other than that, I do have 3 other renders that are on the back burner. And the reason why they're there is because I still have a lot to learn just to get those to look even remotely right. You know, they're pretty detailed pieces. So I want to do them justice before I actually, you know, attempt a video for them. But thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you so much, D, for the suggestion. I'm glad that you trusted me to to render this thing. And please, 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 please go give D a follow over on Twitch. I will link her channel down below. You know, who knows? You might even hear my voice on some of her streams too. I've played some Left 4 Dead with her. But she has been a good friend of mine for many, many, many years. And she deserves all of the love and support that should be coming her way. But please like this video, comment down below if you got something to say, and consider subscribing too, so that way you know when render videos are coming out. You know, and if you do that, ring that little bell down there so you know exactly when they go live. And then follow me over on Twitter too, so that way you can take part in the polls. You can see, sometimes I also post up like sneak peeks or like work in progress stuff. And you can also just chat with me or see me rant about like anime, games, VTubers, and all that kind of stuff. I'm always looking for people to talk about it with. Yeah. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for your support. And I will see you guys in the next render whenever it comes out. And just stay safe out there, everyone.